Welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some news stories, shall we? The first story is called, Owners Should Think About the Emails They Write. I worked at a small video game studio about a decade ago. The studio did mostly console ports for larger publishers and was notorious for severely underpaying its employees. They also screwed employees out of contracts so that the boss could make a profit, which he never shared with the company. When I became a manager, I tried to lobby for higher pay for my hourly workers, as the pay was at $8 an hour in 2011. There were 3 guys on my team so broke they were literally living in their car in the parking lot. The boss, who was also co-owner of the studio, frankly said to me, "I will continue to pay $8 an hour until I can't find anyone willing to work for that." He was also notorious for bringing on unpaid interns, making them do the work of a full employee, promising them employment at the end of the internship, then breaking his promise. He was notorious for being a tightwad. He excluded hourly employees from company meals during overtime, and would claim he was feeling generous when he would let the hourlies eat after all of the other employees had already cleared out most of the food and what was left was stale and congealed. At one point, a contract with a larger company fell through, and the boss let half of the studio know about their layoffs by holding a meeting for them in the parking lot, and letting employees know that their jobs were gone, their passes to the doors were disabled, and they could expect their belongings mailed back to them in a week. He let some employees go back in to get things like wallets and car keys but under security escort. At that time, a release party for a game was held that got released before this mass layoff happened. The boss emails out to the whole company, letting everyone know how generous he's feeling that he's going to allow all of the laid-off employees on the project to come to the release party of the game they made. It was at a swanky place in town, known for high-end cocktails among other things. The boss writes in his email invite that there was a $15 per drink limit. What he meant to say was that each person at the party had a $15 limit for drinks for the night, in total. What the bar and everyone else interprets, correctly, as that there was a $15 per drink limit. The employees giggle as they read the email invite that was also sent as instructional to the bar, and excitedly exchange text messages and emails with the laid-off employees. The boss is also notorious for not showing up to his own parties until 2 hours in. Cue the night of the party. Everyone shows up bright and early, and as soon as the party officially starts, everyone swarms the bar asking for the most expensive cocktails and liquor the bar had to offer. Every employee and former employee was 5 to 6 fancy cocktails in and 3 sheets to the wind by the time the boss shows up. He saunters in to cheers and pats on the back from laid-off employees, who are so drunk by now that they probably saw 3 of him. He smiles and waves magnanimously, thinking the former and current employees were drowning their sorrows at their own cost. He wanders up to the bar to check in with the barkeeper. He sees what the damage was so far. After 20 seconds of conversation, the smile from his face has disappeared completely and been replaced with a scowl. Words are spoken, the barkeeper disappears and comes back with the manager. Tenser words are exchanged with the manager, who disappears into a back office and then returns with a piece of paper, presumably a copy of whatever contract the boss had made for the party. The bar and the drinking partiers were in the right. The company, at the time, was not financially able to handle the price of the drinks and the boss was made to pay the cost out of his own pocket. Sadly, he was not able to afford 2 new luxury cars that year. The company had to shut down about a year after this event. The next story is called, Waiting on Maintenance. I used to work at a small amusement park about 8 years ago. During the weekdays, the park was generally not too busy and would close around 8. My shift was from 3:30 to 8. The ride's manager's shifts were from 9:45 to 3:45 for the early shift, and 3:15 to 8:15 for the late shift. This particular day, I wasn't feeling too good. Usually, when someone wasn't feeling good, they would let you work one of the easy rides like the giant slide. All you had to do was sit at the entrance, checking for height compliance and rider wristbands and passes. Since I was one of the seasoned workers, they usually had me work the more complicated rides. That day, they put me on the most complicated ride in the park, the Ferris wheel. I had told them I wasn't feeling well that day and politely asked if I could have an easy ride that day. But our manager told me no. I pleaded, but they told me I was one of only a few there who were qualified to run that ride. So my partner and I headed to our ride, and when we got there, as luck would have it, they told us one of the buttons on the ride had gotten stuck and they had just radioed our manager to contact maintenance to come out to fix it. When something happens with the ride that required maintenance, the rule was to close your ride and radio the manager, who in turn radio maintenance, as we were just ride workers and were not allowed. So we waited for maintenance to come to fix the ride. 10 minutes go by without them showing up. 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes. Nothing. Maintenance at one point had even driven by on their golf cart as if nothing was wrong. 2.5 hours go by of me sitting and getting paid to do nothing when our breakers come to relieve us for our 30-minute break. We let them know that we were still waiting on maintenance to come to fix the ride. We go on our break and I am happy because I was now in the air conditioning and I basically just got paid to sit and do nothing for the last 2.5 hours, even less than what I would have done at the giant slide. While in the break room, my manager was very upset and confronts me and my partner after our breakers told him that maintenance still hadn't arrived. I told him it had happened while the early shift was out there and that they had already radioed the ride manager. We were just waiting for them. Turns out they told the early shift rides manager, who knew I wasn't feeling well. It was the late shift manager who put me on the wheel and wouldn't allow me to work an easy ride. Apparently, the early manager had forgotten because he was busy with a shift change. The early shift manager had my back. Meanwhile, our break was over and we went back out to our ride for the last 90 minutes of the shift. By this time the park was nearly empty as people either headed home or were eating dinner or went to the park's pool for the rest of the night. Maintenance was just finishing up when we got to the ride. The maintenance guy asked me why I didn't call it in to my manager and why I didn't flag him when he went by earlier. I told him I wasn't feeling well and my manager refused to let me work the slide. He was like, "All right, I see what you did there." We worked for the last 90 minutes only running the ride a handful of times. After that, they altered the rules to if maintenance didn't arrive in 5 minutes to radio the manager again. The third story is called, "Don't Tell Me How to Do This." I had a boss who told me not to tell him how to put a computer together because he already knows how and I don't need your unsolicited advice. Okay. Strap yourselves in for the background. I am a woman. In the tech industry. Do you already see where this is going? Not only was I a technician at this place, I was the technician. The one who trained 80% of the techs, had the highest numbers in the district and the top 10 in the territory. But I always went by my last name. So, everyone who wasn't physically in my store thought I was a male. Due to circumstances, we ended up getting a new manager from another store out of state. His first day was on my day off. My coworkers told me he wanted 2 hours with each of us to learn our thoughts on diagnosing issues, and he was really eager to learn from us. He was especially interested to learn from the top tech who he heard about in his previous store. Until he learned I was a woman. He did a 2-hour session with all the other techs but me. He always went to the male techs with questions. He tried to make me work the counter to just check computers in when I was one of only 3 full-time repair techs and we had 7 counter techs. He tried to make me do his paperwork on several occasions. He also started trying to repair computers by himself, even though that was not his job. He would leave computers half repaired with no notes, then write up whatever tech he thought should pick it up where I left off. The whole team hated him and started making remarks of, "She could fix this if you asked her." Or, "I think she fixed something similar in an hour and you've been at this for 2 days?" And other phrases to anger him that a woman knew more than him. This was the perfect setup to one of my favorite moments of my career. The manager got it in his head that he was going to do something to prove he knew his stuff, so when a customer came in wanting a custom-built computer, which we weren't supposed to do, he grabbed the opportunity. He helped the guy pick out the parts, compare prices, and sold him the labor to put it all together. He also told me he was going to build it in my repair space, and he was doing this alone. And, I will never forget this. Don't tell me how to do this. Let me learn. I will. Cue the manager putting this machine together on the bench behind me while I continued my work, just waiting. He has it together, hits the power switch. The computer turns on, then off. Then on, then off. He unplugs, then takes it apart. Then together again. Same result. I can hear the wheels turning behind me, but he told me not to give him advice. So, I keep working with my mouth shut. Let him ask me when he's good and ready. He then believes parts must be bad. So, he has the customer send parts back, wait for the new ones, then try again. Same result. This continues for 2 months. He has the customer, who is obviously very angry at this point, send every single part back. Then have a whole new set of parts delivered. He has promised the customer this is the last time. This time it will work. He definitely knows what he is doing. The day arrives where the customer brings in the parts. The manager is there. I am there. I stop repairing computers as he puts the final part in, and I lean against my bench to watch what is about to happen. How could I not? He hits the power. Same result. He is furious. He throws the screwdriver across the bench, denting the wall, and curses so loudly I am sure a customer heard. He puts his hands on either side of the machine, head down, shoulders slumped, utterly defeated. In a quiet, defeated voice, he asks me, "What's wrong with it?" "The motherboard and processor aren't compatible without an update." "How long have you known this?" "Since you first turned it on 2 months ago." He turns. He is red in the face. Veins are bulging, and I'm pretty sure he thought about decking me for a second before composing himself with a very, very deep breath. "Why didn't you say anything then?" Me, smiling sweetly, "Because you told me not to, and to let you learn." "So, have you learned?" He stormed off, and out of the store. He ended up taking 2 personal days, and I ended up building a new PC that actually worked. The customer was cool once I explained everything and even showed them how I cable managed to allow the best cooling and looks with their clear case. It's a story that ended up being the legendary story to tell all new techs. I left the company a few months later for a higher paying job, and that manager ended up getting fired due to my general manager believing him to be the reason for my leaving. I never corrected that perspective. After all, how else will he learn? The last story is called, "He Presented My Project." This story happened nearly 1 year ago. In computing class, we had, like in any other class too, some competent, some incompetent, and some lazy students. The main task was programming with Java, and since I love coding, I already worked a lot with Java before we used it in school. This wasn't a secret, so many came to ask me instead of our teacher for help. The teacher was already busy helping others, and kind as I am, I help every time as good as I can. But after some time, something started. The lazy guys walked through the room and looked on others' code and copied it. With some time and minimal effort, they made their code working and got through the years. I am mostly a C# developer, so I ignored most of Java's conventions. I wrote method names with capital letters, handled get and set methods as C#-like as I could, and so on. This saved my code from being pirated. And now we had our last project. Over more than 2 months we worked on this, and again the code piracy started. But since it was a more complex project than anything we had done before, it was hard to copy something completely, it was simply too large to explain similarities. Like every time, I have no exact idea. I started around 10 projects and finished 2 large and 1 simple. Then, in the last week, one of the laziest came to me and asked if I could make him a project. Since I had one completed that I wasn't proud enough to present, I gave it to him. He thanked me and took it. He played a bit with it to show how it works, and that was it. He doesn't even took a single look in the source code. Not only made I some very unusual coding as always, but I also signed the code with my name. On top, I placed all my projects in our shared folder, like everyone else. And because of this, my copy was there first. He was one of the last who presented, and like with every project, our teacher asked him to show us some code and explain parts he was really proud of. So he opened a file, and the first thing was the information about the author. My name. So he told him that he used this to build his project on. Our teacher actually allowed us to take parts from elsewhere, as long as we marked them as others' work. He opened another file, and the first thing was the information about the author. But since he already thought that this would be there, he scrolled down as fast as he could so no one could see the author. Now everyone could see my special style of coding. He ignored this and made some vague comments which explained nothing. Then he closed the file but kept the overview open. In the overview, you can clearly see the name of the project. Our teacher smiled all the time. He already looked into our projects, so he could ask if he doesn't understand what we did or if he isn't sure which grade we deserve. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.